Hello, everybody, and welcome to our digital drafting provided presentation today, site design webinar with Autodesk Civil 3D. We're very excited to have Seth Cohen here with us today presenting. He is our Civil 3D technical specialist and trainer, and we're excited to have him. Do we have a logistics slide here, Seth?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. All right, so just some quick logistics for everybody. All of our attendee lines will be muted for this presentation. And if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, please send them over in the chat box. And we will answer those at the conclusion of the webinar if we have time. And the webinar will be recorded as well. We'll be posting that on our YouTube page. And you should receive an email if you registered for this webinar as well with that link afterwards. For any questions, concerns, anything like that, give us a call at 305-445-6480 or send us an email at info@ddscad.com. So without further ado, Seth, take it away.
All right, thank you very much. All right, welcome everybody. All right, so the agenda today is I'm actually going over a real project that is a site design / corridor modeling. It's a really I would say involved, complex project, and I wanted to actually go over some of the kind of the tips and tricks that I've encountered with it. So the agenda here is we're going to first kind of talk about alignments, intersections, and offsets of my. Then we'll get into the assemblies, sub-assemblies, creating the corridor model, some sub-assembly tricks, targeting tricks that I can kind of relate to you guys that I encountered while doing this project. When to use feature lines, some tricks with labels, some feature line tips, a be careful tip or two that I found really was a zinger that actually caused about 3 extra hours of work. When to use grading objects and only when. We'll talk about surfaces, and then we'll just kind of put it all together and talk about dynamicness heaven, because that's obviously the key to doing all this. As you can, if you've ever done a site project, you know that there are so many different parts of a project that are involved that obviously you want it to all talk to each other, so that when you change one thing, the other part updates, or it lets you know, hey, you've changed something. And obviously that's the key thing, because as we all know, the biggest issue, not issue, but the biggest thing that happens is once you get that model created, or once you get your design created, it's always, hey, can you just change this? Oh, hey, you need to add that ditch over here. Oh, by the way, your profile, I don't want that retaining wall anymore. I now want a ditch instead of a retaining wall. So the ability to make those changes quickly, easily, and have everything else that is important, such as labels and things like that, update, that's really the crucial thing, okay? All right, so let's just jump right in. So the first thing I want to show you is, let me just show you the completed project. So this is actually it right here. You can see, if you can kind of tell by the object viewer here, we've got a couple of roads. Here's a road here that comes into the main road over here. Here's another road over here that comes into this part of the project. I've also got we got building pads everywhere. As you can see, one's there, one's there, one's there, one's there, etc. We've got a couple of ponds in this project. So here's the pond. We've got a couple of, we basically have I use ditches for this entire project. There's a lot of cut, but we avoided basically, in fact, the developer told us we saved him about $300,000 worth of excess quantities for doing retaining walls and other things like that, because the site is in a lot of cut. We've got a ditch here kind of going this way. You got a bunch of sidewalks going into the buildings here. We've got a ditch running through this way. We have another pond that basically splits the site as far as the drainage goes. And as you can see, through the back side here, I've got a ditch running the whole way. Yep, it's a steep slope, but it does work. It follows all the right criteria. Got a ditch running this way, a ditch running this way, and then the ditch goes into the pond there. And of course, we have low points and things like that all running together really nicely, okay? So as you can see, it's a pretty involved project, right? It's got about 5 or 6 roads, it's got ponds, it's got building pads, it's got sidewalk throughout you obviously have to have accessibility, all that good stuff, okay? So let me start out here. The first thing I want to talk about is, let's get back into civil, is the alignments and some of the tricks that you can do with alignments. Let's see, it's still catching up here. It's a pretty big project here. My computer's doing its best to kind of handle it. But I want to go over some of the tips and tricks kind of the beginning of the project, which was let's lay out the roads. That's kind of the first step that I recommend you guys do. And there are some really great functionalities and tips that you can leverage within Civil 3D, of course, that will automate and work for you, right? Let me go ahead and just attach my geometry file because I basically have that as a backdrop here, so we can actually see kind of how the site is laid out. That way you guys get an idea. Overlay relative, all good. All right, so basically, as you can see here, right, we've got we've got a bunch of roads, right? There's a main road that goes this way, there's a main road that goes around the site, and then all these other interconnected roads, right? We've got a couple of interconnected here, this way here. I got some this way, going this way. You can see it's really quite an involved project, as well as we have sidewalks and buildings and all that good stuff, all right? So one of the things, of course, when you're doing site design is, of course, you figure out which way, the first thing you do is, where's the water going to go? How many ponds you're going to need? You do a general kind of idea of things. And basically what we figured out was, here's the high spot of this site, existing wise, and just kind of the way the natural flow of the water. So we have a pond going this way because we have a watershed this way, and we have another watershed this way. As you can see, this one's a little bigger. We got the ponds a little bigger as well. So obviously laying out these roads, there's a couple of things that I want to actually do. In this case, we decided to not have drainage going to the center of the road, because then you have to, your structures are a little more expensive. So we are basically doing super elevation. We're going +2, -2, so that the road drains to one side in all ways. So the great thing about Civil 3D is it can automate a lot of this for you, so that when you do modeling, you don't have to kind of worry about any of this, as far as, with feature lines and things like that. So the first thing I want to just kind of, as a tip, I always kind of do this. I'll just set my viewport configuration to 2 vertical here, because one of the nice things about this is that I can actually, you can see I already have my profiles created and for the majority of these. Now, one of the really great things is, notice how as I move along a profile, notice how it tracks it in the other view, which is absolutely crucial when you're kind of trying to figure out where you are, how you want things to work, etc. So I have a little bit of a Lisp routine running in the background, and it runs specific commands, okay? The way that you can run it real quickly is if you type CUI in the command line. A real easy way is to run this thing called a Lisp routine. If you've never done a Lisp routine, you don't have to be a programmer. I'll just kind of quickly show it to you here. It's not a very involved Lisp routine. All it actually is, where did I put it? It's up here actually, yep, Lisp. And I'll just show you, right at the top of the list here, you can see it's literally, you can, forget the stuff below here, there's this thing called command, and then basically it'll run a specific set of commands. So one of the commands that I use is this one right here, AECC station tracker all, and that's located, so you would obviously load the Lisp here, just right click load, right? And then basically, as you're loading that, the way, it'll load it for every drawing, and where that's located is analyze, inquiry, and then station tracker, and then all viewports. And if you wait a second, it'll tell you station tracker all. It's basically the command. So when you click it, it pops up in there in the command line. So I have that run every time. That way, the second I open the file, because it doesn't stay active, this pops up and I can kind of see it. So that's a really useful functionality. And again, just in general, this is a great thing. So let's go ahead and actually create the profile and stuff here for this road, because the tip I want to show you here is one of the key things. As you can imagine, I've got this main road here and I've got this main road here. Well, as I design the profiles, as I go in and say, okay, I need to lower this here because I'm getting too steep of a grade, or I need to raise it because I'm getting too steep of a grade, whatever it is, you need to kind of figure out for the buildings and tie-ins. You want all of this to talk to each other, right? It's a pain in the butt if I actually have to figure out the elevation here, then adjust it in this location. There are ways to do it. There are ways to trick it with like labels, but there's a much more automated way. So what you want to do is, the first thing you want to do is actually you have to have a profile for this line. And so this alignment here is called First Street. You can kind of see, here's First Street, and as I go along here, right, notice how it automatically is showing you where it is along this here, right? So I've got a slope of, -1.36 going down this way, right? And as it intersects with this, we hit a vertical curve, et cetera, right? So I don't want to figure out what that elevation is. I want it to happen automatically. That way I can kind of change things around, and then I want this side road, or these intersecting roads, to update automatically. right? So the first thing you want to do is obviously make a profile for your main lines, right? That's this one here, and etc. Okay, and then what you do is you make a profile view of the road that you're in. So I'm in alley 2. That's what I kind of call these. All right, you can kind of see as I go through here, right? It's updating in this view here. So I want to go ahead and I'll just select my profile view. I'll go to Profile Creation Tools. And then I always start with an underscore. A little tip here, you should know this by now. If you do any corridor modeling, always do an underscore for proposed alignments or proposed profiles, sorry, because it will go to the top of the list when you model, and that way you don't have to worry about it being in the wrong alphabetical order type thing, okay? I'll just click OK here. Now, I'm going to just simply create one, okay? I'm going to just create a simple, draw tangent here. And what I do is I'm going to snap to the endpoint of existing ground right at the edge, right at the beginning of the alignment, and then right at the end of the alignment. I don't care about the grade. It does not matter, because here's the beautiful thing about Civil 3D. Once you have this profile in there, okay, then what you can do is use the intersection tool. Now, I actually don't use the intersection tools for like corridor modeling because it's kind of a pain to do. You can, if you set it up correctly, it can be automated, but it sometimes is a little too difficult to do that. So I just kind of usually do intersection design by hand. But for this one kind of example, or for these examples here, where at least to get it started, this is crazy useful, because what it does is, of course, make sure you snap to the intersection here. It pretty much kind of figures out your primary road. So this is going to be second and alley 2, and I'll call this, actually, no, this is first. Yeah, this is first and alley 2. All right, I'll hit next here. And it is, I do want rows maintained, but you can see here you can do all crowns maintained. But in this case, I do. I'm going to have that -2, +2, right? Depending on which direction I want the water to flow. Notice how you can change the order here. So the first thing you want to do here is I do want to change my offset parameters, because in the parent alignment, which is this one here, my width might be different. So let's say it's 11 feet. I don't remember actually, but I'll just keep it 11. And for this one here, let's say it's 10. We'll just go with that. But you can change them here, okay? And again, you can change it afterwards as well. I'll click OK. And then for the curb return parameters, this one, of course, you do want to make sure you go to, because here you want to define your radius. This is, in this case, it's 15. And then I'll hit next to go to the next quadrant, which is also 15. I'll click OK here. All right, for lane slope parameters, this is also up to you depending on what's going on. Now, again, remember I told you, in this case, I do want to actually go up and down depending on the depending on which way I'm going. Now, in this case, I want the water to flow into the center of the site, basically. So my alignment's going down this way, so that means my right side should be +2, which it is, and my left side should be -2. Okay, that's here. Now, on the side road, in this case, I've got the water coming down this way as well. We're now into pond 1, actually, which is down in the south side. So if I go down here, that means left side is +2, so we'll just do +2 here, and then right side is -2. Right? You get the idea here. We're kind of keeping one side, we're getting the water to drain on one side. That way I don't have to have drainage in the middle. I can put my drainage towards the sides, and we don't have to reinforce. We can obviously set the type 9 structure into the curb, et cetera. That way it's outside the pavement, so we don't have to reinforce it. I'll hit next here. Now, if I did have a corridor, I would actually toggle this off. I don't need the corridor functionality. All I want is this functionality. I'll just hit create intersection. You'll see what it does is it immediately basically figures out what the elevation is at those locations. It creates this nice little object here, and what you can actually do is you can actually kind of, if you can, I've created this label style already, that way I can actually see and make sure that everything is updating automatically, because I will say sometimes, rarely, it will lose its link, and you want to see that with the elevation. But as you can see here, notice how this one automatically figured out the slope. Now when I select this profile, notice how it's locked. I can't change it. Here's the cool thing. If I were to change, I'm not going to do it just for time's sake, if I change this profile, right, this will update automatically. It goes up or down. Okay. Now for this one here, I must not have done an offset profile. That's okay. I could always change it afterwards. I'm not going to waste the time. But basically, it would have done the same thing. Okay. Now, what I like to show this, and here's how I kind of check this, is this way. I'm going to open up another viewport by simply dragging that. Okay. Viewports are your friends when you do this kind of modeling. All right. I'm going to go ahead here and type in Southwest Isometric, because if you set your profile up correctly, your profile style. Let me turn this off real quickly here. let's turn my references off real quickly. Let me just select this here, right click and then unload this. And I create a 3D view, you will notice that it automatically creates this nice, I can see the actual profile. I like to see this because you know why? I want to make sure this is still dynamically setting this up correctly and changing with it. Like I said, sometimes it will lose the link, but for the most part, it should be just fine. You'll see here I kind of messed up. It's no big deal. I'll simply select this geometry here. I'll pick this offset alignment. All right, and I will, well, waiting for it to kind of catch up here. Don't click too much. And I'll just go ahead and pick this and we'll go perpendicular to this alignment here. That's the offset alignment of this road. And I'll pick this one here, pick that grip, and we'll just go perpendicular here. All right, so now that matches up. Now you'll notice here, all of this changes. Here's a really cool aspect of this, okay? So if I go in here and let's say I decide, okay, I want this one here to be in a different offset, as far as let's say a different grade, or I made a mistake, you can right click offset profile properties, and I'll just exaggerate this so you can see it. So make sure you're looking at this view right here, okay? And if I go in here and let's say change this to, I don't know, 50%, just for the heck of it, and I'll click okay here, you'll notice how the whole thing updates. Notice how that actually changed everything. So this profile is linked to this profile, which is linked to this profile and everything. And it parabolically changes it. All right, so that's the beauty of this. So as you can imagine, if you change something, that's the, whoops, I didn't want to do that. If you change anything about it, it's all interlinked. And that's the really difficult part, especially if you're doing, site design, is you change one little thing or the developer says, oh, I need, my grading's not working, all right? Now, here's the other really great thing is, let's say, my grade or my drainage is not doing what I need it to do. So in this section here, let me go back to this viewport. It's just trying to wake up here. All right, there we go. So I'm in alley 2. So let's say I actually, that grade, maybe the grade's okay. Usually 0.3 is typically good. But let's say I wanted to go half this way and half that way. So basically what I can do, let's say that 61 plus a pair is the station it needs to go to. I want to add a PI at that station. So I'm going to go ahead and just simply go to the add PI command right here. Okay, I'll insert PI, and then don't forget your transparent commands. I'll go over to the station from plan. And again, when you don't know what to do, as I always say, look to the command line window. It's saying select the profile view. So the little trick here is you always pick the numbers on the side. It's, for whatever reason, that seems to work the best. All right, it says specify station along baseline. I'm going to click once in this view, and I'm going to go ahead and just snap to 61 plus a pair. Now, look to the command line window. It's asking you for an elevation. So I click once in here, and notice how it's asking for an elevation. Well, guess what? I don't really care right now. All I want to do is just maintain a 0.3 at some point. I'm going to add one. I'll just add a vertex right here, and then we'll just press enter. Because what I can actually do is, I don't need this to be that high, or maybe I do. Let's say I want that to be negative 0.3 or positive 0.3. Remember, this is all staying locked to the other alignments, the other profiles alignment, or the alignments profile, sorry. So, but what I can do here is simply select this. Actually, it's already selected here. It's already up here, but I can just do the parameter editor here. And I can go over here and I can just type in, well, I actually want this to be locked at 0.3 and just change that. It updates automatically and the other grade changes as well. Okay, again, you are obviously locked for this, and that's fine. That's how I want it to be. I want it to be actually locked because it all interacts with each other. And again, that's the beauty of this functionality, is that if I change anything, I have all these offset alignments, and I'll just show this to you. You can kind of see this in the 3D view. If I change any of these, right, notice how these are all interlinked, right? I've got all this intersection design occurring here automatically, right? There's the intersection, there's the intersection. This profile, if I change any of these, they will update automatically. So again, it's a combination of doing offset alignments. So, and the way you get that is you simply select your alignment that you want to go offset, and you click here, and then you define the distance you want it to be. And then over here in the create offset profile, this is where it initially sets its profile grade, which comes from the proposed profile, which is why you need a profile first. Okay, so always create that profile first. Okay, one of the other tricks I will just show you, just for time constraints, I want to make sure I get to all my tips here, is one of the issues I have. Let me get rid of this viewport. Again, the way to do this is just simply drag up here and then hover at the top and let go. Oh, let's do it again. There we go. Now I've got back to my 2 viewports. Okay, let's just change this back to top. by clicking the view cube there. So one of the issues that I will have, or not have, but one of the things I do want to see is right up here. You see this object right here, right? This linear feature is actually a utility easement. Okay. What I did was I basically had, the surveyor located this. I took their easement, I draped it to existing, and I assigned the elevations. I made it a feature line basically. Okay. Actually, I'm sorry, I didn't make it a feature line. I made it an alignment. Once I make that alignment, I get a surface profile. Here is that easement surface profile. I want to actually see this elevation because one of the things, as if you've ever done site design, that you want to know is what will this look like? What will this existing elevation look like along my alignment, which is covering the entire part. All I have to do is I have that alignment. I simply select this, and then I superimpose the profile, which is dynamic. It's obviously just existing, and I put it on to right here. So here's the cool thing. This is existing ground. Okay, that right there is existing ground. You can see that. This one here is the easement. And I gave it a different style. That way I could actually see what's going on. Because one of the issues I had here was I was going to have to put a retaining wall, or at least I was thinking about it, because I was so much higher than existing here. But it turns out the developer said, no, I don't want a retaining wall. Drop that thing down. Get me whatever cut you want. As you can see here, that's what we're basically doing. And then here's my proposed profile. And in this area here, we just, because it's far enough away from the site, we can put some sidewalk steps. We just put some sidewalk steps because you can see it's flowing, this is staying up while this goes down, okay? So, but it's a really great thing because it lets you see exactly what's going on at that location, okay? So alignments and profiles are your best friends when doing the entire site here as far as the roads. Now, again, like I said, these are all completely interlocked. So if I were to change anything, I'm not going to just because but I'll just show you if I change this around, look what happens. It's automatically tying into all that aspect of that geometry. Now, of course, I wouldn't change it major, but if I did, it would still I'd have to obviously change the profile and things like that, but that's basically just the nice thing about Civil 3D as far as with alignments and profiles, okay? All right, let's see what the next thing I want to talk about here. Whoops. Go here. And we want to, all right, so let's talk about assembly, sub-assemblies, creating the corridor model, and just some tricks as far as that goes, okay? All right, so I've already created the corridor model. Obviously, I'm not going to go over the entire process. It takes a good amount of time because there's a lot of stuff that goes on here. But what I want to show you is some targeting type tricks and things that you're going to have to do. The thing about let's first go to the assemblies and sub-assemblies, okay? So I first initially started out with a simple road one. Now, here's the thing. With the lane, I don't bother. I put two, at first, actually, you can see it is going down into it, but that's because we were initially going to do this, but we went against that. But it doesn't really matter because the thing that I do is I actually don't just do it horizontally. This could be 5 feet, 2 feet. It does not matter because for every section of my corridor model, if I go ahead and select my corridor model here, and I'll click edit target so you can see what's going on here, and I'll just pick this region over here, let's say, I actually target horizontally and vertically my lane. You can see that in the left lane and right lane because I don't want to have to remember, oh, is this part of the assembly going down 2% or up 2%? Or part of the road. I don't remember that, and I don't want to remember that. I don't care. I've designed my offset alignments to be at the correct grade for their offset profiles. If I change anything, well, guess what happens? It updates automatically. The other thing too is this site changes roadway width quite a bit because we're trying to fit buildings, we're doing all kinds of stuff. In fact, one spot we had to, because we were so tight, we had to make it one way. So in fact, down here, if you look, this is actually a lot smaller of a width, okay? So I don't want to have to worry about that. So whatever my offset alignments are, I simply target those. You can see here, I have an offset alignment for every road, and I simply target that by targeting its alignment and profile. You can see here by the arrows, this is a nice, very, very easy way to quickly see which way the water is going. And I do this on purpose. Again, it can take your machine a little bit of time. This job is actually, it's not too bad actually. I have a pretty good computer, so it actually does a pretty good job. But as you change the quarter model and as you change things you're targeting, it automatically updates it. All right, so back to the assembly. So little tips that I do is basically I start out. This is how I do it. Again, everyone does things differently, and if you have a better way, honestly, just type it in the chat panel. I am by no means, I've seen people do other things, but basically I like to have ways to target. I like to have my targeting options available because I have so many different conditions for this quarter model. I basically started with a default one. It says target not found. What that means is if I don't find a target, it uses this one automatically. It doesn't even, it just does it, okay? Now, what you'll see here is I have a type F curb, okay? I then have a utility panel. I think that's what this is here. And then I have, actually, no, this is sidewalk. That's right. This is sidewalk. Yep, right, sidewalk. And then I have a simple one here that is my building target, because the biggest thing that I need to figure out is I need to figure out the elevation pads. And the way that I do that is I simply trace my 2D where the buildings are supposed to be as a feature line. And then I set elevations based upon what the corridor model is doing, because I have a range for my driveway. My range is 2 to 14%. That's DOT standards, okay? This is for the city of Ocala, and that they actually say just follow the DOT standards. So to do that, again, these right here, I show you kind of a little bit of what else I do. So here's a building pad, right? This building pad right here, if I select it, I basically have all these four corners, these four sides, and these are all feature lines at the same elevation initially. Once I get into fine-tune grading, I might change the side slopes or the side buildings, because obviously this is for the driveway. In fact, let me just show you that here. I'll just turn my reference file on so you can see basically what's going on, right? So here's the configuration of the driveway. The key thing that I have to have is 2 to 14%. So what I do, another little trick here, is I simply make a surface label. It's just a 1 hour slope label. This allows me to figure out, okay, is this exceeding that? Is it negative? Is it going is it going down into the driveway? So if you look here, what I do is, again, I have different scenarios. In this case here, this is Miami curb, right? I've got Miami curb going all the way through here. So of course, the person, the driver or the resident can drive over into their house, right? So in this case, I don't have type F curb. So remember what I said. I like to start out with like a default one, so it just targets it. So you think of your site, whatever you have going on in the majority of your site, which almost rarely happens because there's so much going on with this project, especially. But you basically just say, okay, what's my target found, not found, sorry. And then as you add, additional ways of modeling, you add in what's called target founds. Okay, so by adding them as target founds, what that says is this: these will never be found unless you actually target them. So for this scenario to work, what I would have to do, in fact, I believe it's this one right here. So this is, if I hover, and the key thing, name them. I cannot stress that enough. Name all of these. And the little trick that I do with quarter modeling is I actually name them like in the order that you see it. This is number 1 always. You'll see the number 1 in parentheses. This is number 2 and number 3 and so on and so forth, right? And then what I do is anything within that actual targeting part that is part of it, I will give it an A. I know it sounds kind of strange. It's my own naming convention that I come up with because it allows me, because here's the key thing. When I'm in this scenario, and let's say I hadn't targeted this yet, okay? In fact, I think I have an area, yeah, right here. Let's say I want to target this right side. This is that Miami curb right side. It happens to be number 2, I believe, on this side as well. Yes, it is. So I'll go ahead and pick my corridor. All right, and then I will go ahead and add a region. So I already have the baseline in here. So I just, again, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. Select the baseline. I'm picking, this is my baseline. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and snap to the endpoint of my previous region. And I'm gonna do intersection design here. I know I am. So I'm gonna go probably to actually this location right here, right at the PT or the PC. We'll stop right there, okay? What one do I want to use? I have my core assembly road, hit OK. And then what pops up is your edit target dialog, or your target mapping. Now, look at my assembly. Imagine trying to figure out what the hell to target. Now, if you're not, I don't know if you guys are on the beta team for the Civil 3D, and if you are, you know what's coming up. They are completely revamping target map targeting within core models. In the next version of Civil 3D, it's going to be tremendous. There's going to be a search engine here. I think it's going to be a non-modal dialog box, so I can actually click in here, not have to hit OK and figure out stuff. So it's going to be very, very much more user-friendly. Okay, they're changing this completely, but here's why you name it. Okay, the first thing I have to do, let's just do the right side. So the first thing I want to do is I want to target my right lane, which is actually the alignment. So I'll click on the pick button here because I don't remember the name, and I'll go ahead and pick my alignment here, and we'll go ahead and pick. Yep, there it is, right there. And then once you pick it, it doesn't do it. You got to click add. So I'll click add. That's okay. And then now I want to shut off the default one, right? Because I'm not using that. I don't have type F. I have this right here, okay? So I'm gonna just shut this off. And the way you shut it off is by picking any horizontal feature that is perpendicular to it. So I'm just gonna pick the same exact thing that will shut that off, okay? So these here, think of them as just like if-then statements. Like if this is found, or if it's not found, it just does it. But if it's found, it shuts it off. And then I will turn on the one that I want here. So what I'll do is I'll turn on number 2. So I'll pick this right here, and then we'll go to, I want to do the same thing. I'm not targeting anything just yet, horizontally or vertically. I'm just turning it on, basically, okay? That now will turn it on. And then now, here's why you name it something. I now need to target right building 2A. So I'll click here. And I already have, it's a feature line, so I pick the feature line option. So this is horizontally. So here's my feature line, and I'll go ahead and pick the feature line. Come on, let's go over here. There it is. And then you will have to name it. Just so you know, I always name my feature lines because I'm going to actually, there's a possibility I might want to target them. If not, it'll just use the name template. And then vertically, I want to do the same exact thing. So right here, I got to do the right lane. So I'm going to pick the profile, and to do that, I'll first pick the alignment of this object right here. And then there's the profile, which happens automatically, right, from the previous functionality we talked about. And then we'll go to right building, and I want to target this feature line. The feature line has an elevation already. And basically what I would have done, just so you know, and initially I would have just done the curb, and then I would have gotten the elevation, and then I would have basically kind of done a rough, math, just a calculation saying, hey, that's 7 feet times the grade, 0.015, whatever I want to be, or 0.02, I start with that. The distance times the grade gives me an elevation, add it to the elevation, and then that gives you an idea of where you want that to be. And then I'll just hit OK here. And now it will add that targeting on that side, and it will actually target this horizontally, vertically, and it will actually show me the grade inside the actual road as well, okay? Let's just hit escape here. Oh, that keeps happening. All right. And so now if I hit escape, you'll see that my surface will update automatically because it's the road surface, and then now you can kind of see exactly how that's actually flowing, right? The water's going this way. We've got it's super elevated going to the north, and basically, obviously, all the water's flowing down to the opposite locations and stuff, okay? The opposite sides of the intersection. All right, so here's the other, again, the really cool thing. So this is what I would kind of do. I would do this, and then I would copy my label here that I have. So as you can see, that's pretty low. I don't want 0.87%. We're going to change that in a second here. So I would just copy this around and say, okay, what's my grade for each of these? That's 15%. Well, we probably got a problem there. I might have to actually step these buildings. That's another possibility that I might have to do. But let's say I want to raise this. So again, here's the other great thing. So I simply select my feature line. I look at the properties, it's at 86.2, and if I needed to calculate the grade, I would simply use this command here. Here's my next tip, which I love this tool. I put in my quick access toolbar. It's called the Analyze List Slope tool. What it does, again, we don't know what to do, look to the command line window. I want to pick points. I want to snap to the endpoint of this line here, somewhere in my drive. Look down here, look in the status bar, okay? And you can see here my elevation is 86.16. And then if I snap to the endpoint here, oops, I did the wrong one, but that's okay, you get the idea, right? It says my first elevation is 86.165, my second's this one, my elevation difference is that, and what's my slope? So that's obviously not really a steep enough slope, I need to raise this. Now, if I wanted to do the math, of course, this is just basically just math. If you've ever done site design, you've probably done this yourself. So I'm going to take 86.16 and plus, let's say I want to go up, I want to try a 5%. So 0.05 times, it's actually 8 feet. So I need an elevation of 86.56. So I'm going to change this feature line to 86.56. And this is kind of the stuff that you do. So everyone does it differently. I go to elevation editor here, and I just go to the panorama here, and I want this to be 86.56. I do a Control A, click to get them all, 86.56. Press enter. One of the other tips I can't stress enough, you're going to actually have to make each of these building sides separate feature lines. If you make it one big one, what you'll find will happen with the corridor model is it's not going to know which side to toggle. It may even toggle the other side. That's how it works. Depends, like for here, if you look, I've got this feature line being targeted from here, but it's also might think it should be targeted from here, right? So these are the types of things you got to kind of just be aware of. Just make separate feature lines. Now, of course, that needs to change. So if we look over here, I'll just zoom in, and then I'll go to my prospector tab. Of course, my corridor now is out of date. Right-click, rebuild. That will update the corridor, which will in turn update the surface, which will in turn update the slope arrows, which will in turn update the slope, right? So you can actually kind of dynamically see it all update, okay? So again, these are the kind of little things that you're gonna just kind of do. And of course, with just some basic kind of calculations, you can figure out the grades and all that good stuff. Okay, that should be finishing up here soon. And again, as I go through the lecture here, if you have any questions, simply just type them in the chat panel. All right. So just another targeting trick I want to kind of mention here is this. Boy, it will not let me get back there. We'll just have to hit escape. So one of the things that I do is you can use your alignments. That's fine. But one of the other things that I will do is I'll actually set these up with an offset, just a regular polyline offset. Let me go back to that file here. That was over here. So if you look, and again, what I do is I put them on their own layer. That way I can call them out by layer if I wanted to. So if you look, it's this, I'm colorblind, so I might say this wrong. It looks like a brown line. But if I select this one here, it's on a layer called corridor targets. If I do a select similar, you will see that these are simply regular polylines and they're offset along my entire job. So I'll just do an offset because it's again, I call it a trigger target. It simply turns a specific part of your assembly on or off, right? You simply just know that. And so these are just offset, right? It just offsets from the alignment. That way I can just pick that because sometimes your offset alignment will not actually go all the way. And so it might end your corridor targeting. So I just offset some polylines and just put them on their own unique layer, okay? All right, let's talk about when to use feature lines. Okay, so the key thing here as far as modeling goes, I found what works the best is this. You really want to model, I mean, it depends, but like for instance, right here, you see, this is a kind of a mistake. This is an older version of the model. I stopped doing this. I was modeling up to where like I could see the building or the whatever. I want to shut this off. Basically, what I would do is I would actually I added curb only subassemblies. You see right there, there's my type F curb only. There's my Miami curb only. Oh, and another little tip here, if you need to find those curbs, I would download the DOT state kit because if you look over here under F.dot subassemblies, instead of trying to figure out the calculations for everything, what you can do is go to your curb and gutter. DOT created for you automatically. It's awesome. I mean, here's the other cool thing. Once you place one, just in a little trick, if you select it right here, right, and go to properties palette, you'll notice that actually right over here, where is it? Is it over here? No, it's not. Actually, Miami curb is different. Miami curb is its own thing. It's the F curb, if I remember correctly. Yeah, right here. You can change this right on the fly. I can literally change it to A, E, F, drop curb, shoulder gutter, etc. It's really cool. The F curb is by itself because it's its own unique kind of animal, right? But I add this by itself because what that allows me to do is I'm going to actually I'll go over here and we'll go to edit targets because in this area here, I just want to put the F curve. I don't want to do anything else because I found trying to target the buildings and things like that, it just didn't work the best. Let the feature line do its own thing. Eventually, these feature lines will be added to the finished grade surface. Just let it do its own grading. Just do the corridor where it needs to be done, because what you'll get is like areas like this, and then the intersection doesn't look right, and you're trying to model near this driveway. It just doesn't do a good job. Okay, so in areas like this, your best bet is to simply do the curve. And again, the way you do that is you go to edit curve, edit targets here, click this one. And then on the left side, I want to shut off the default one. So if we look here, again, notice how I name these because it makes sense. I'm not going to worry about the lane for now. We'll just do this one here. I want to shut this off by simply picking the alignment because it is in the offset area. All right, and we'll just pick that alignment right there and then hit add. That'll shut it off. And then I'm going to scroll down and I want type F curve only, which is, again, name these something that makes it right here, number 8. So this will just basically turn the curve on and shut the targeting or the default one off, right? So we'll pick that again. I'm not sure I got it here. Did I get it? No, I didn't get it. We'll pick that. All right, that's not working. Come on. There we go. And we'll add this, hit OK, hit OK. And again, you should see this assembly, the subassembly on the side, the utility / sidewalk panel, or I'm sorry, the sidewalk and the building panel will just disappear because obviously now I've turned on the curb but shut off those there. And then basically, you'll just let the surface do its own thing. You'll do a finished ground surface where you paste them all together, and we'll talk about that later on as well. All right, so feature lines. So when to use feature lines. So basically what again, you're going to do your 2D geometry. So, you're going to basically, what I recommend you do is you create a separate file. You'll see here, I've got pretty much a completed, this is a somewhat completed one. I've got some areas where I basically, I'll just show you what I do for kind of feature line tips here. But these are all basically done and they're already in there from the geometry file. And what I did was I went into my geometry file, which is all flat at 2D, and I simply copied to clipboard, paste to original coordinates, and now I've got them all in there at flat, and then I start doing my grading, right? And again, you're gonna have to, obviously you're gonna have ADA things you have to worry about, like over here. You're gonna have parking that you have to worry about, right? I've got the curb ending and the parking will be flush with this. So, depending on what your constraints are, like in this case, right? What's your constraint? Your constraint is the road, plain and simple. That road, I got a valley, right? This is going up at 2%. It's going down 2%, up 2%. Actually, where am I here? It's all going down, but that's fine. So this is, creating that little, basically where it's grading down, but the elevation right there is the most important thing. And then from there, I will actually go up at 1.5% or between 2%, of course. And then from there, I also have other constraints like the building over here. So you got to kind of figure out where you can actually, grade down and grade where it needs to be. Now, one of the tricks I want to show you is this is probably one of the best things that I found. Actually, I didn't make this one up. I found it on the internet because I was trying to, here's the thing, as you're doing grading, like let's say I'm going to grade this one here. I don't know the elevation. Right now, this is a polyline, right? So if you look over here, it's just a polyline. I'm going to turn this into a feature line. All right, so I'll go ahead and just pick on the home tab here, feature line, create feature line from objects. We'll just go ahead and pick this, enter, done. All right, I give them a name. Most definitely give them, I can't stress this enough. A lot of people, they skip this step, and I don't skip this step. Just give it something, because trust me on this, when you want to add these to a break line, or you want to add these break lines to a surface or whatever it is, you want to make sure everything's working correctly. Now, one of the other tips I do is I make them, I don't put them in a site unless you really have to have them talk to each other. I don't use sites unless I need to. But basically, I use this style here called generic feature by block. Okay, what does that mean? What that means is this. Let's just look at this feature line style. It is set to layer 0 with properties by block. What that does for me is it automates it so that it reads the layer of the feature line. It works just like a block does. In AutoCAD, if you're not familiar with this, in AutoCAD, every block goes on a layer, right? You should know that. However, this stuff inside the blocks, right, can go on their own unique layers, right? You can have a block with a rectangle and a circle. The rectangle could go on layer rectangle, and the circle could go on a layer called circle. Well, if those objects are on those layers, they take on that layer's properties. However, if you put all those objects on layer 0, and you set them to by block, you can change the properties and let the layer that you put the object on, like the block or the Civil 3D object, be controlled by it. That's why I do this here, because then I can say my panel is red, as you can see right over here, right? My panel is red, my daylight's blue, or this one's magenta, whatever it is, okay? So it just uses the layers properties, which I like. I am going to erase this, and I'm not going to assign elevations. I'm just going to click OK. All right, so now I have a feature line. Now, here's the thing that I don't, that sometimes as you're doing grading, it'd be really nice to see. I'll show you the tool that you're going to use a lot. All right, the first one is the quick elevation edit, if you're not familiar with that one. Basically, what you do is you simply select your feature line. If my drawing will catch up here. Oh, there we go. All right, so I'll select my feature line here. And then you go to right up here, which is the quick elevation edit. And then what you do is you simply hover over the different spots that you want to change. You can change elevations, you can change grades, etc. Now, what I do have to figure out though is this. Here's another little trick that I have here. So this is actually reading. This is my finish for elevation. Now, just so you know, my feature lines are actually coming from the driveway. They're not reading this here. I just did some math. Let me actually go into this file. I'll show you what I did. So, for instance, if you look at, let's say, this building right here, it says 83.41, right? Let's look at the feature line that's controlling how this elevation looks. Is it at 83.41? The answer is no, it's at 82.8. So what's going on here? What's going on is I created a special surface label. I have 3 types of buildings in this site. They each have a different finish roll elevation, 0.6 inches plus whatever it takes to get to from the driveway to the front door kind of thing, okay? So what I did was I simply created a surface label. And if you look here, it's a spot elevation 1. And I have a finish for elevation for the A building, the B building, and the C building. And all it does is it simply uses the expression that I have defined for A, B, or C. So if you right click here, go to edit, you'll notice it says surface elevation plus that elevation, 0.5. In this case, it's 0.11. That's what it takes to get up to the finished floor from the driveway. And in the C case, it is a little bigger. I think it's 0.7 or 0.67, right? So I simply trick the label because that way I don't have to worry about, hey, figuring it out for each one. I just say that's an A building, copy those labels. Now, that said, if I go to my feature line drawing, and like I said, when you're doing your feature lines, I recommend you put it in a totally separate drawing because that if you put in with the other files, it'll really get bogged down. So you have one drawing. What you're eventually going to do is make a surface out of this drawing, and it's going to then be synchronized or pasted as a data reference into your finished grade model. Okay, so here's the, so 86.71 is my finished floor. I need to get this, this is basically a patio. It's going to go down at 1.5%. So again, I'm just going to use some basic math here to say, okay, 86.71 minus 0.015, and I think it's 5.5 times 5.5. So that thing's going to start at 86.63. Okay, that's what it needs to start at. So using that tool, so we'll go ahead and pick on this tool here, and then I'll go ahead and pick this 86.63, press enter. We'll go ahead and just, instead of typing that many, I'm all about saving picks and clicks. So if I just click here, I can do 0, enter. Notice how it basically starts to, it just changes it to that elevation. Now I want to go down here. Now let me hit escape. So let's say you get a phone call and come back, you're like, oh shoot, which one did I do? What's the elevation? I don't remember. Here's the tip that I love. Again, this is the thing that I didn't know how to do this. I found this on the internet. And basically, if you look, there is a way to create what's called a in a label style. I want to create a line curve one, and just Google this, you'll find it. What it does is an expression out there called grade check. And basically what it does is it allows you to label your entire feature line and label every vertex, just make a label style, every vertex and the arrows themselves. If you use the default out of the box, it doesn't do it, which is really kind of stupid. So there's an expression that gets created that it figures out the math for you. So what you do is you simply select your feature line and then go to the add labels, multiple segments, and it's weird, you got to pick it again. So I'll pick it again. And now notice how it automatically finds, actually that is wrong. I got the wrong labels. So let's do a select similar here. And we'll go over here and I'm going to change this from standard to grade and arrow. And this one here is just grade. Actually, I want grade, arrow, and elevations. Yep. So this is what's really cool because one of the problems that you'll find is as you're doing, like, again, look at this site. I've got tons of sidewalks everywhere. If I had to go to another task, whatever it was, to basically figure out what elevations you did and have not done, it's very difficult. So if you can see it at least visually within that multiple segment, so I can actually see, oh, whoa, I got 300% grade. I got to fix that, right? So again, this is why that label style is just fantastic. Okay, if you want to know how to, I can send it to you. Just give us your email. I'll send you the file, or like I said, you can Google it. So I'm not done. I need to make sure this is ADA compliant, and of course, this is not ADA compliant. We have a roller coaster here. So I want to make sure this goes to existing. So that's where I'm tying into. So all you have to do is go back to that tool, and then click on the elevation here. And then when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. S for surface. It says, make sure you read this. Notice how it says surface sidewalk grades. That's my actual finished surface, which is wrong. So I need to pick a different surface. So say yes, and then we'll go over here and we'll pick EG. This is existing. And then we'll pick over here, and that actually tells you the elevation. That's what I want. And then I'll pick over here, S spacebar. It does pick it up again. You don't have to worry about it, but it does tell you in the command line right here, right, where what it's coming from. Press enter. And now we can see, oh, that one works fine. That sidewalk works great. It's less than 4.99%. I don't need a rail. If it goes between 4.99 and 8.33, I need a rail, or the developer might say, no, I don't want any rails. This is frontage. You probably don't want rails. So you would do something like I've done over here, where if you exceed it, you have to do like, hey, let's go down to 4.99%. And then when it ties in, it's all good to go. Okay. So there are obviously little tricks that you would do, things like that. Okay. All right. One of the things I did want to show you, this was a gotcha moment for me. This is the be careful tip, because I'll just show you what I did. This was literally 5 hours of extra work that I lost out on. So I was going through this whole, you can see this one little area here. I've got a building, parking, the road, other buildings, the road, right? Profiles, things going everywhere. It was really difficult. I finally got kind of down to the end. Oh, plus I've got this pond I got to tie into, or be close to at least. And then I got this other building over here. Now, again, these are far enough away that I could kind of lose or change some of the grade over here, or get my grade back. So one of the tools that I use a lot, let's say I would get the elevation at this finished floor, and then the elevation over here. And the way I would get the elevation here is by using this command here. So select the feature line. This is how this works. And then go to the set elevation by reference tool. So what you do is you snap to the point you want to come from. You go to the point you want to go to, and then you tell it what grade you want that to be. Let's say I want that to be a grade of -1.5. I click, type -1.5, press enter, and now that is -1.5. And you can, of course, see it's updating all the stuff automatically and all that good stuff, okay? Now, one of the things you want to do is, let's say this is your constraint. You're kind of locked in, down over here at this elevation here, right? And this elevation here. I want to set the slope between them to match. Whatever that slope is, let's see if it works. So there's a tool here called Set Grade Slope Between Points. And what you want to do is you select your feature line. It's right over here. And then what you do is when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. Specify the start point. I'm going to start here. It tells you, is that the elevation you want? Yes, it is. Press enter. Then what you do is you pick the next point, or the point to go to lock down that elevation. Now, here's the gotcha moment. This feature line is a loop, okay? What I accidentally did was I went this way, right? I didn't know I was doing it. Notice how when I go this way, it's selecting those. So I came down here and I picked my point, and guess what it did? I'll do it just for the hell of it. And it says that's the grade. I'm like, oh, that's within ADA compliance. I'll press enter. Watch what it does to the rest of every single frickin' point and grade along this. I did not notice this until I exited the file. I came back in and I said, oh my gosh, why is every single grade 0.05%? It literally changed every single grade. So that is completely messed. I had to do this whole area again. And I forgot what I did. It was like 2 days later. I didn't even notice it. I noticed all of a sudden there was this flat spot on my surface in certain spots and high points and others. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And so be very careful. It's a necessary tool, okay? Obviously, if I undo, I can get back to where I was before, and then it is useful, right? Because then you just go between the points that you want to actually set that slope between. So it just kind of figures it out for you. So just be careful with that one, okay? Okay, when to use grading objects, and only when. I'm going to say this. I mean, if you probably have heard this don't use grading objects? The answer is you have to. Okay, there are many instances where you just have to use grading objects. When you want to daylight, if you have to daylight, well, you got to use grading objects. There's no other way to do it. Okay, you could do a corridor model if you really wanted to, but that's a long, way to go. The other time you want to use it, which was very useful for this project here, I'll just show you some areas. So I have some, again, I'm pretty high up right here. I've got a ditch running through this. We're going to do some piping through the sidewalk so the ditch water can flow. As you can see, as I tie into existing, this is my daylight line. You'll notice it's not a daylight. You notice it is not a daylight line anymore. The reason being, again, try it out, save often, maybe save another copy of it. I'm not kidding you. With this job here, my file went corrupt twice. All right, it just does. It still has an issue. I think because here's the thing that's great. Grading objects, if they live in the same site, will talk to each other. Check this out. I have two abutting for, let me shut my reference file off. Let's just unload this real quick. So I have two abutting sidewalks here at 4:1. They were really tight together. But what I can actually do is if I did grading, notice how the grading automatically figured out where that ditch should go. It's awesome. It's fantastic. However, I believe it caused my file to go corrupt. All right, it didn't go corrupt for a little bit, and I had a finished surface. I was done, and then all of a sudden I couldn't open the file. It just would not open. So I inserted it as a block, exploded it. It let me do it, but all the grading broke. It literally it didn't. So I assumed that that's the reason it did it. So here's what I recommend you do. I'm getting low on time here. I'm not going to go through I'll just show you the motions. I'll just show you the steps here. First off, you need to add your feature lines to a site. I just call this daylighting here. Whatever you want to call it, daylighting. Oops, we'll leave it all caps. That's okay. And then you would go over here. You would create. Go here, expand this, right click, create a grading group. I honestly don't care about the name. It means nothing to me. But what you do need to do is you would then pick the feature lines that you want to, let's see if I've got some, here we go. So you would pick the feature lines that you want to add to that site that you want to do for grading. Let's say I want to see in between these two to see if it's going to grade well. Okay, so I would right click, move to site, and you would pick that site. Hit OK. Now you can apply grading. Some grading tricks that I will show you. For instance, one of the things you have to have off your sidewalk, DOT standards, is to have a 2-foot panel at 1.5% or flat. It doesn't matter. Okay. So if you go to the settings tab here, what you can actually do is you can actually create a grading criteria that locks that down. If you look here, I've got one here called 2-foot panel. And then all it does is it locks it down 2 feet, negative 1.5%. And if you lock it down, it actually just does it. It avoids a bunch of picks and clicks. I'm a little hesitant to do it. Right before the webinar, I was just practicing. It crashed the drawing, so I'm not going to do it. But you get the idea, okay? If you start from scratch, if I started this over again, it would probably be fine. But then what you do is this. This is the key thing. I would recommend this. Once you get your daylight line, explode your grading object so you're left with just the 3D polyline. Then what you do, select them all, and then go to your surface and add them as a break line. And that's what I've done here, is I added all of these as break lines, okay? Again, sometimes it'll be just fine, and try it out first. Just make a copy, keep it a copy that works great, and then do your grading, see if it works, because the great thing about grading is you just add it to the surface, you're done, okay? But basically just see if you can do that, and then see if it'll work. All right, I see we're getting low on time. I want to leave some questions. All right, what about surfaces and putting it all together? Let's just talk about all that. So like I said, this is a totally separate file. This has its own surface called sidewalk grades. I just left it as is. Then what I did, I made a data shortcut called sidewalk grades. And then in my proposed file, I simply paste it together. All right, now surfaces, you'll see I have an FG top. I also have a subgrade. I'll explain that in a second. And if you look at my definition, actually, I'll just go to the surface properties. That way you can see it all. You'll see basically what this is. My ditches are in this file. That I did do because they all kind of talk to the corridor model, right? So that's okay. So you'll see here, I do give some of them descriptions. I definitely recommend you do that. You'll see in some cases I forgot to give them descriptions, because if something messes up, sometimes you'll have to delete that. And to figure it out, it's a little bit of a pain, but just give them descriptions like ditch by pool, Fill area by pond. Pond 2, I paste the pond in there. Obviously for grading, I didn't mention that. Your ponds have to be grading objects. That's fine. And those are in this file too. You'll see I've got those separately, okay? And so just paste it all together, and then once you're done, I'm not gonna show it again, but you get the finished ground surface. The great thing about the dynamicness is this, as you can imagine, right? Anything I do, now that I've done this all together, it does take that little bit of time. But here's the thing, I've had this developer tell me 5 times, and I'm sure if you've done site design, it's probably you've had the same experience as I had. 5 times. Oh shoot, I've got these trees here. The survey didn't locate it. You now need to avoid this part of the pond because I don't want to get dinged with it and add it over here. So I had to change the pond. Then he came back and said, hey, we said we're going to do the retaining wall. He said, no, I don't want a retaining wall. That's too much money. I had to change everything. I changed the entire profile. You can see here, let's see, 2nd Street. Yep. Notice how this is all this thing here was sitting above. I had my site completely balanced. I had 100 cubic yards of cut. It was awesome. I had the site balanced perfectly. We were going to do retaining walls. He said, no, I don't want to pay for an extra $100,000 worth of retaining walls. And we were like, okay, I had to change my entire design to go below here to match into existing so I could get a ditch to pop it up. As you can see, I'm at least 2 feet below here. I gotta be. I'm at 82 and this is at like 84. So there's my 2-foot ditch, right? I have to be there. So that drops this entire site, the entire road. Well, guess what? Because this was all interlinked and I spent the time interlinking it, it all updated automatically. I had some hiccups here and there, but not many. And it was really that dynamicness, you can't beat that. That is just something that in this, especially with a site this complex, saves you a tremendous amount of time and money. The other thing too, a buddy of mine who I've worked with, he says, oh, at some point just drop the road stuff and make them all feature lines and work with feature lines. I said, no way, I can't. You know why? Because for cut and fill quantities, right? What's your cut and fill quantity when you do a road? Your cut quantity is here, not here. So I need here for elevations, I need here for cut. As I change that coorder model, I have to have a subgrade surface. There's no way around it. That cut is I think it was an amount of about 10,000, 20,000 cubic yards. I mean, that's a huge amount of cut, right? Because the entire site is in cut. So I couldn't drop them. I couldn't just make them feature lines and start working with them. Plus, if I change the profile to change feature lines of the abutting, it's going to be a real pain in the butt. So I left it a road. It's all dynamic. And that's the kind of the beauty of using feature lines and along with the coorder model and so on. Okay. I know it's a little bit over time. I'm willing to stay on if you guys are to answer some questions.
All right, thank you, Seth. So far, just one quick question here that we had. Is there a way to change the grade of a feature line next to another feature line?
Yes. So let's say, and basically that's sometimes you'll have to actually kind of do this. Let's say, for instance, I've got a building, and you always usually have like a 5 foot at like 1 to 10 slope kind of setback, or not setback, but just flat spot. So if I change this one here, let's say I change this to 85.5, right? If I change this to 85.5, we'll just do that here real quick. So I'll click Control A, click here, 85. Actually, I'll just make it 85. It won't be that high. And then I will, rebuild this surface here. Of course, this one here, which was meant to be at 10%, if I right click here and choose rebuild, that slope is no longer 10%, and it's not dynamic. It's not attached to this feature line. And so basically, obviously, you'd want that to be then to quickly, instead of having to delete it and offset it, right now it's going to be at whatever percentage. So basically, oh, come on, catch up. Yeah, there we go. So now let's say I want this one to be that same one, off of that by that slope. I can select this and go to this tool right here, which is adjacent elevations by reference. You pick the object you want to come from first. It's kind of backwards. So I pick this here, and then it says select object to edit. I pick this one here. It says, if I zoom out, you'll see it's going to do it to all the elevations, the whole feature line. It says specify the elevation difference or grade or slope. So I'm going to do a slope of -10, press enter. And now I'm not going to rebuild it just because we're kind of past our time. But what I will do is I'll just show you this tool here. If I go ahead and let's just press escape, and we'll go to the list slope tool. So if I do that, I'll just shift right click nearest, and I'll go perpendicular, And if you look at the command line window, you'll see it's at a slope of -10 to 1. So that's kind of a way that you can do that.
All right, perfect. Just one more question I think we see here. What are the specs of your computer? Seems to be running pretty smooth.
Yeah,
I don't know.
surprisingly, actually. Yeah, so this is my laptop. My laptop, I've got a 32 gig machine, 32 gigs of RAM, i7 processor. I also, let me actually, let's go here. So this is, yeah, it's an i7, 2.69 gigahertz, 32 gigs, and it's got I think a 4 GB video card. So it's pretty good. Now, and of course, SSD drive. You have to have an SSD drive nowadays. Now, I'll say this, my desktop, I have 64 gigs of RAM, a 6 GB video card, and a 3.69 gigahertz i7 processor because you can't go wrong with that, and it runs really fast. So I can't stress this enough. Honestly, the computers nowadays are not that expensive. I mean, when I say expensive, a job, you're getting paid for a job, maybe $100,000, $200,000. My computer cost me $2,000. That pays for itself in one job. I mean, I can't stress enough. Get yourself a really good computer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Seth. Can I have you jump over to that next slide? Perfect. So thank you guys for attending our webinar today. Be on the lookout for some future webinars that will be coming your way. You should be receiving emails about those if you're on our mailing list. As I mentioned, this video will be sent out very soon to you over the next day or so, and it will be available on our YouTube channel and on our website as well. Please contact us at 305-445-6480 or at info@ddscad.com for any additional information or questions regarding any new features, training, support, pricing, anything like that. Definitely reach out to us. And all right, thank you so much all for being here, and thank you, Seth.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.